Welcome to Mystery Bible. My name is Ken Primus. I am your host. We are continuing to look at Moses' interaction and Aaron's interaction with Pharaoh as they are standing there obeying God and walking by faith, as we state, that they are now confronting him. We saw from the book of Josephus, we saw from the book of Yasher. And so we're going to spend a couple of podcasts here because there's so much in the legend of the Jews. And I wanted to put all of their information in it because they're coming from a different vantage point that we have talked about. So let's get right into it because we're going to do it in a couple of podcasts. And again, I'm just going to read what they have so that we can get it from their belief system so that we can get a better handle of the story. And again, we're looking from the legend of the Jews. And it reads this way. The chapter is entitled Measure for Measure. And what they're doing here within the legend of the Jews is that they're breaking it down, God's judgment by these three individuals, Aaron, God, and Moses. And so let's take a look and see what it comprised of from each individual. God divided the 10 punishment decree for Egypt into 4 parts. 3 of the plagues he committed to Aaron, 3 to Moses, and 1 to the 2 brothers together, and 3 he reserved for himself. Aaron was charged with those that proceeded from the earth and the water, the elements that are composed of more or less solid parts, from which are fashioned all the corporal distinctive entities, while the 3 entrusted to Moses were those that proceeded from the air and the fire, the elements that are most prolific of life. The Lord is a man of war, and as a king of flesh and blood, devise various stratagems against his enemies. So God attacked the Egyptians in various ways. He brought 10 plagues down upon them. When a province rise up in rebellion, its sovereign Lord first sent his armies against it to surround it and to cut off the water supply. If the people are contrite, well and good. If not, he bring noisemakers into the field against them. If the people are contrite, well and good. If not, he orders darts to be discharged against them. If the people are contrite, well and good. If not, he orders his legion to assault them. If the people are contrite, well and good. If not, he causes bloodshed and carnage among them. If the people are contrite, well and good. If not, he directs a stream of hot naphtha upon them. If the people are contrite, well and good. If not, he hurls projectiles at them from his ballistic state. If the people are contrite, well and good. If not, he will scald ladders scaled out upon against their walls. If the people are contrite and well and good. If not, he casts them into dungeons. If the people are contrite, well and good. If not, he slays their magnates. Thus did God proceed against the Egyptians. First, he cut off their water supply by turning their rivers into blood. They refused to let the Israelites go, and he sent his noisy croaking frogs into their entrails. They refused to let the Israelites go, and he brought lice against them, which pierced their flesh like darts. They refused to let the Israelites go, and he sent barbarian legions against them, mixed with hordes of wild beasts. They refused to let the Israelites go, and he brought slaughter upon them, a very grievous pestilence. They refused to let the Israelites go, and he poured out naphtha over them, burning blains. They refused to let the Israelites go, and he caused his projectiles with the hails that descends upon them. They refused to let the Israelites go. And he placed scalding ladders upon the walls of the locusts, which climbed them like men of war. They refused to let the Israelites go. And he cast them down into dungeons, darkness. They refused to let the Israelites go. And he slew their magnates, their firstborn sons. The plague that God had sent upon the Egyptian corresponded to the deeds they had perpetrated against the children of Israel, because they forced the Israelites to draw water for them, and also hindered them from the use of the ritual bath. He changed their water into blood, because they had said that the Israelites go and catch fish for us. He brought frogs upon them, making them to swarm in the kneading and their bed chambers, and hop around, croaking in their entrails. It was a severest of all the 10 plagues, because they had said to the Israelites, "Go and sweep and clean the houses, our courtyards and our streets, and change the dust of the airs into lice, so that their vermin lay piled up in heap in elms high." And when the Egyptians put on the fresh garments, they were at once infected with the insects. The 4th plague was an invasion of the land by hordes of all sorts of wild animals, lions, wolves, panthers, bears, and others. They overran the houses of the Egyptians, and when they closed their doors to keep them out, God caused a little animal to come forth from the ground, and it got in through the windows and spill open the door and made a way for the bear, the panthers, the lions, and wolves, which swarmed in and devoured the people down to the infants in their cradles. If an Egyptian entrusted his 10 children to an Israelite to take a walk with them, the lion would come, snatch away one of the children, the bear would come off with the second, the serpent the third, and so on. And in the end, the Israelites returned home alone. This plague was brought upon them because they were in the habit of bidding the Israelites go and catch wolves and lions for their circuses, and they sent them as such errands to make them take up the abode in distant desert, where they would be separated from their wives and could not perpetuate their race. Then God brought a grievous murrain upon their cattle, because they had pressed the Israelites into their service as shepherds, and assigned remote pasturing places to them, to keep them away from their wives. Therefore the murrain came and carried all of the cattle in the flock of Israelites were tending. And remember that we read that earlier, where they had separated the men from their wives. And I believe when we read earlier, it was Moses' father that came up with that, so that they can keep them from killing their family and so forth, and to control the men from being near their family so they wouldn't get hurt. And I believe it was after Miriam came to the father and said, "Hey, Dad," and she had a conversation with the father, that the men were allowed back to the wives, and that's when Moses' father and mom got pregnant with him. So we see then that from their perspective, we see some other insights that are given. The 6th plague was boil breaking forth with bomb upon man and upon beast. This was a punishment for the Egyptian, because they would say to the children of Israel, "Go and prepare a bath for us unto the daylight of the flesh and our bones." Therefore we were doomed to suffer with boils that inflamed their flesh. And on account of the itchy, they could not leave off scratching. While the Egyptians suffered this, the children of Israel use their bath, because they had sent the Israelites forth into the field to plow, and so hail was sent down upon them, and their trees and crops were destroyed. They had been in the habit of saying to the Israelites, "Go forth, plant your trees for us, and guard the fruit thereon." Therefore God brought locusts into the Egyptians' border to eat the residue which was escaped, which remained unto them for the hail, for the teeth of the locust are the teeth of the lion, and he hath the jaw of teeth of great lions. Because they would throw the Israelites into dungeon, God brought darkness upon them, the darkness of hell, so that they had to grope the way. He that sat could not rise up on his feet, and he that stood could not sit down. The infliction of darkness served another purpose amongst the Israelites. There were many wicked men who refused to leave Egypt, and God determined to put them out of the way. But the Egyptians might not say that they have succumbed to the plague like themselves. God slew them on the cover of darkness, and in the darkness they were buried by their fellow Israelites, and the Egyptians knew nothing of what had happened. But the number of these wicked men had been very great, and the children of Israel, spared to leave Egypt, were but a small fraction of the original Israelite population. So we are getting some insight as to what is going on within the, first-hand account, if you will, from, again, the vantage point of the people that were in the Israelite group. The 10th plague was the slaying of the firstborn, and it came upon the Egyptians because of their intention to murder the men of children of the Israelites at their birth. And finally, Pharaoh and his hosts were drowned in the Red Sea because the Egyptian had caused the children of the Israelites, to be exposed in the water. So we see from their vantage point, each one of those plagues to them represented something that the Egyptians had done to them. And so they interpreted that God was exacting punishment for how they treated them. And so that's how they saw the 10 plagues. Each of the plagues inflicted upon Egyptian and other parallel in the cruel treatment accordance to the Israelites. The first was the punishment of arrogant word spoken by Pharaoh. "My Nile River is my own, and I have made it for myself." The plague of the frog God brought down to Egyptians because he said, "The frog which sometimes inhabit the water shall take vengeance upon the Egyptians for having desire to destroy the nation destined to be the bearers of the Torah, and the Torah is likened unto water." God sent the vermin upon them, saying, "Let the lice made the dust of the earth take vengeance upon the Egyptians for having desire to destroy the nation whose seed is like unto the dust of the earth." Hordes of beasts, lions and wolves and swarms of serpents came down upon them because God had said, "These animals shall take vengeance upon the Egyptians for having desire to destroy the nation that is likened unto lions, wolves, and serpent." A fatal pestilence, was brought upon them because God said, "Death shall take vengeance upon the Egyptians for having desire to destroy the nation that faces death from the glorification of the name of God." Faces death for the glorification of the name of God. They were made to suffer with burning blains because God said, "The boils coming from these ashes of the furnace shall take vengeance upon the Egyptians for having desire to destroy the nation whose ancestor Abraham walked in the fiery furnace for the glorification of the name of God." And remember, that particular reference is to when Nimrod had put Abraham into a furnace and with lions and so forth, something similar, if you will, that happened to Daniel and the Hebrew boys as well. So let's continue to see, again, this is the vantage point from the legend of the Jews. He made hail to descend upon them, because he said, the white hail shall take vengeance upon the Egyptians for having desire to destroy a nation whose sin shall be white. The lotus came upon them because God said, the lotus, which are my great army, shall take vengeance upon the Egyptians for having desire to destroy the nation that is called my host. Darkness, God said, which is divided from the light, shall come upon and take vengeance upon the Egyptians for desiring to destroy the nation upon which shineth the light of the Lord, the light of the Lord, while gross darkness covers the other peoples. The 10th plague, the slaying of the firstborn, God inflicted, saying, I will take vengeance upon the Egyptians for having desire to destroy the nation that my firstborn, that is my firstborn, which I told you guys, God considered Israel his firstborn, but he had also told Moses that Pharaoh wasn't going to let his people go until this happened, because in God's mind, he said, if you are going to try to kill my son, I will make sure that I kill yours so that you can understand who I am. And so that's how we look at it. As the night divided itself for Abraham, that his enemies might be vanquished, so I will pass through Egypt in the middle of the night, and as Abraham was proved by 10 temptations, so I will send 10 plagues upon Egypt, the enemy of his children. And so that is for measure by measure we read in that particular vantage point. And so now we are going to look, they have divided it now into Aaron's plagues, and then they went into Moses' plagues. So let's take a look at Aaron's plagues. It says, from the affliction of the first of the plagues until the passing of the last, after which the Egyptians yield all that Moses and Aaron demanded, they elapse a whole year, for 12 months in the term set by God. For the, it's really interesting. Let me stop here for a minute. The Bible doesn't go into the time and as far as how long it took. We know that it was mentioned in the book of Yasher that it was that time. In the Bible, it said the following day. But here, when that first plague came, and but what this is saying here, it was some time. They took some time, and it says that it was a whole year, 12 months that this thing took place. And that's really fascinating. And again, that's why I like bringing in these different sources, because you get some additional information that took place. So those guys suffered for a year, man. It says the deluge lasted 1 year. Job suffered 1 year. Sinners must endure hell torture for 1 year. And the judgment of God at the end of time will be executed for the length of 1 year. Moses announced the first plague to Pharaoh on one morning when the king was walking by the river's bank. This morning walk enabled him to practice a deception. He called himself a god and pretended that he felt no human need. To keep up the illusion, he would repair to the edge of the river every morning, and in ease nature there will alone and undeserved. So at such time it was that Moses appeared before him and called out him, Is there a God that have human need? Truly I am no God, replied Pharaoh. I only pretend to be one before the Egyptians, who are such idiots. One should consider them asses rather than human beings. That is a really interesting statement. I remember, I'm going to digress for 1 minute. I remember reading an article, actually a long time ago, about Donald Trump. And Trump had said that he would, if he's going to run for president, he would run as a Republican because they are really stupid and they'll believe anything he says. And this was back in the 80s. It's really funny that that's exactly what he did. And I promise you guys, he did say that. And I need to find that article because I remember, I lived in New York at the time, and I remember some of the things that he said because it was so outlandish. But he did say in an interview that if he's going to ever run for president, he would run as a Republican because the Republicans are idiots and that they would believe everything that he says. And I'll try and find that, see if I can locate it and put it in the show notes so that you guys could see that I'm not joking, because it is. I remember that. But anyway, so we're seeing some stuff here from these guys' point of view. I mean, we know what those plagues are. We know that Moses had several, according to the reading. We know he had 3, and God had his. So let's go on as far to what is called the First Passover, and this is very important in the Jewish belief system. After they go through the plague, the first Passover was in that plague. And that Passover was when they had to put the blood over the door, and where the spirit of death will be walking by and taking out everyone that do not have that blood over their door as a protection. And that is that's a natural application to a spiritual truth about the blood of Jesus Christ and what it does and so forth. So let's take a look at and read the first Passover, because it really is very important within the belief system of the Jewish family and also within Christendom, so that we can have an understanding of where it came from and how it manifested. Okay, let's do this quickly and then we'll end it with that. The first Passover. When the time approached in which, according to the promise made to Abraham, his children would be redeemed, it was seen that they had no pious deed to their credit, for the sake of which they had deserved release from the bondage. God therefore gave them 2 commandments, one binding them to the sacrifice of a lamb and one to circumcision of his son. Along with the first, they received a calendar in use amongst the Jews. For the Passover feast is to be celebrated on the 15th day of the month of Nisan. And with this month, the year is to begin. But the compunction for the calendar are so involved that Moses could not understand them until God showed him the movement of the moon plainly. There were 3 other things equally difficult which Moses could comprehend only after God had made him to see them plainly. There were the common compounding of the holy anointing oil, the construction of the candlestick in the tabernacle, and the animals and flesh of which it permitted or prohibited. Also, the determination of a new moon was the subject of special divine teaching, that Moses might know the exact procedure, for God appeared to him in a garment with fringes upon its corners, bade Moses stand at his right hand and Aaron at his left, and then cited Michael and Gabriel as witnesses. He addressed searching questions to the angels as to how the new moon had seemed to them. Then the Lord addressed Moses and Aaron, saying, "Thus shall my children proclaim the new moon on the testimony of 2 witnesses and through the presence of a court." So he got these witnesses, God, and he began to expound. When Moses appeared before the children of Israel and delivered a divine message to them, telling them that the redemption would come about in this month of Nisan. They say, how is it possible that we should be redeemed? Is not the whole of Egypt full of idols? And we have no pious deed to show making us worthy of redemption. Moses made reply and said, as God desires your redemption, he pays no heed to your idols. He passes them by, nor does he look upon your evil deed, but only upon the good deeds of the pious among you. God would not indeed have delivered Israel if they had not abandoned their idol worship. Unto this purpose he commanded them to sacrifice the lamb. Thus they were to show that they had given up the idolatry of the Egyptian, consisting of the worship of the ram. The early law was different from the practice of later times, for they were bidden to select their sacrificial animal 4 days before the day appointed for the offering, and to designate it publicly as such to show that they did not stand in awe of the Egyptians. With a heavy heart, the Egyptians watched the preparation of the Israelites for sacrificing the animals they worshipped. Yet they did not dare interpose an objection, and when the time came for the offering to be made, the children of Israel could perform the ceremony without tremor, seeing that they knew through many days' experience that the Egyptians feared to approach them with holistic intent. There were another practice connected with the slaughter of the lamb that was to show the Egyptians how little Israelites fear them. They took off the blood of the animal and openly put it on their 2 side posts and on the lintel of their doors and houses. Moses communicated to the law regulating the Passover sacrifice to the elders, and then turned and made them know the people at large. The elders commended, and having supported the leader at the first appearance for their faith in Moses, caused the whole people to adhere to him at once. Therefore God spake, saying, I will reward the elders for inspiring the people with confidence in Moses. They shall honor the delivering of Israel. They shall lead the people of the Passover sacrifice throughout the redemption and will brought about. So we see them getting ready. This is their first Passover, and God is instructing them how to do it so that they will do it correctly. And so we see that the lamb sacrifice afforded Moses the opportunity to introduce the children of Israel to submit themselves to circumcision, which many had refused to do until then, in spite of his urgent appeal. But God had means of persuasion. He caused a wind to blow that wafted the sweet scent of paradise towards Moses' lamb, and the fragrance penetrated all the parts of Egypt to the distance of 40 journeys. The people were attracted in crowd to Moses' lamb and desired to partake of it, but said, This is the command of God, no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof. And they decided to undergo circumcision when the Lord passed through the land of Egypt. He blessed every Israelite for the fulfillment of the 2 commands and the command of the sacrificed lamb regarding circumcision. So we see these guys, according to them, this is what happened. Again, the Bible doesn't go into all of that, but we see from their vantage point a little more dealing with the first Passover, what they had to go through before they would enter into the land of Egypt. Into the promised land and start their journey. I want to thank you guys for following me, man. I really do. And we are going to continue this next week and make it a pretty short one so that we can get moving, as they say, and continue our journey in the Old Testament as we continue in the book of Exodus. Thank you so much for following me. I hope you guys share and like so that you can spread the word about our podcast here at Mystery Bible. Thank you so much.